affidavit of posting. The agenda was posted in the office of county clerk on the 6th day of August 2020. Notice was sent to the West Bend Daily News, Express News, WIBD, WMBZ Radio, WTKM Radio, My Community Now, Hartford Times Press, the Kewaskum Statesman, Milwaukee Journal, Sentinel. We are in compliance. We have a quorum. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next order of business is the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to accept Supervisor Mary, Supervisor Kelling. Are there any changes or questions? Anything to be removed? Seeing none, vote on this. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, agenda passes. First off, discussion items, District 22 County Board Supervisor recommendations for consideration. Turn it over to Attorney Stern for a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So pursuant to county code and state statute, the role of this particular committee this evening is to recommend candidates to the full county board for consideration to fill the vacancy that was created by Supervisor Brantner's resignation from the board. What that will involve essentially is this committee determining whether or not these candidates are qualified by law to serve as supervisors. At that point, there'll be a discussion potentially or motion by consensus to refer the candidates to the full county board for consideration this evening. And so with that said, I have before me what those criteria are that make someone legally eligible to serve on the county board. And I wonder if the chairman would inquire as to whether the individuals who are interested in serving on the county board are with us here this evening.
So those that are running or applicants for the position, could you please stand? A couple of questions that Attorney Stern will be asking regarding your qualifications for the position.
So good evening. To serve on the county board, you must meet the following criteria. You must be a qualified elector and a resident of the supervisory district, which is District 22. That's what the qualifications are. Qualified elector is defined as follows. You must be a U.S. citizen, at least 18 years of age, and reside in the district for at least 10 days prior to any election in which you would be entitled to vote. If you meet those criteria, you would be legally qualified to serve on the county board. I'd ask at this point in time whether you in fact meet those criteria. Yes. Mr. Chairman, back to you.
And I don't see you guys be seated. I don't see the other candidate, Dennis Myers, but he was on the county board prior. So I would assume that having nothing changed, he would be recommended also. So is there any discussion by the committee? We're not going to be questioning the candidates at this point. That'll be the county board. We'll do that. Our role here is just to say that they're qualified and they could be recommended to the board for consideration. Okay, hearing none. You guys are qualified, and we'll see you at the 6 o'clock meeting right here, and we'll address that at that point. Okay, thank you. So action items, ordinance, meetings, quorum, and order of business authority, membership duties and quorum, section 15.4 and 15.27. This is about remote attendance of all county meetings by supervisors in this new day and age where social distancing and outbreaks of the COVID. We wanted to add that additionally to the county board rules so that people can attend via remote. I think it'll actually help a lot of people if they're traveling. They'll still be able to attend meetings and vote. So I'll entertain a motion to accept. So moved by Supervisor Schleif, Supervisor Mary seconds. Discussion?
So I had not noticed when you might.
Yeah. Let's still turn on for you.
I had not noticed in the ordinance for the presider, language for the presider to be present. I believe that the person presiding over the committee meeting or board meeting should be present in order for that meeting to take place. I think that would be greatly difficult for the county clerk to have somebody presiding over the meeting remotely. So I would probably motion for an addition, an amendment to be sure that whoever is presiding over the meeting, be it the chairperson, the first vice chair, or the second vice chair, that somebody presiding over the meeting be present.
Second by Supervisor Bosser. All right, discussion on that.
I'm going to come up with some language as you discuss that and have that back for you in just a moment.
Okay. So is there any discussion regarding that? I like the idea too. I find it difficult if I wouldn't be present or any of the chair people of committees even, it's difficult enough when you're
Yeah.
up there. So go ahead, Jeff. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so one thing I'd recommend in that language is if the chair needs to attend remotely, then the vice chair should preside over the meeting in person. So,
And
'cause-
or both are remote, then the second vice chair.
yeah, and for committees, it'd be the vice chair, one or the other has to be there and preside over the meeting. Does that make sense, Brad? And does that,
I think the language that I've come up with might address that. It sounds very simplistic, but this is what I would propose. On line 17, the amendment would read as follows. Members except those presiding over the meeting may appear by video conferencing. So if the chairperson is not physically present, they would not be able to preside over the meeting. That would then default right away to the vice chair.
okay, perfect.
That sounds good to me.
If I could add a comment, SERPAC has been meeting remotely all along, and it's very difficult. I wholeheartedly support this.
Thank you. My feeling has been at prior executive committee meeting last term, when we brought this up, that I felt strongly that everything should be by video conferencing, not telephonically. And I'm still of that position, and I would hope that the county would continue to look at that possibility existing for us, because I think it's fair to the public out there to be able to see their representative rather than just to hear a voice and you're not always sure who that person is or how they're reacting. So I would still encourage us to look toward that.
Yeah, with the Zoom meetings, it really does bring you into the meeting. People can see you, you've talked about it before,
Mhm.
facial expressions and, you know, if they're engaged,
Yeah.
body language, that kind of thing too. So, hopefully, I know it says video conferencing first, but I think there may be some instances where somebody cannot get on it. You
Mhm.
know, if you're somewhere where you can only come in by telephone, but hopefully the video conferencing. Okay, so are we all good on the amendment? Okay, we'll vote first on the amendment. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Okay, back to the ordinance. Any further discussion on the ordinance? Supervisor Mary? It's on for you.
I guess I'm not real clear on how voting is going to happen. Or maybe I didn't read in the detail and find it there.
Yeah, we're, that's still in process of how we're gonna do that. That you won't have a button to press. What we've been doing in the past is calling into the clerk, registering your vote and doing it that way. But as we investigate this further, We have very capable staff to make sure that we have the tools necessary to be able to vote.
Because I participated in a couple of these Zoom meetings and where people vote aye, you do a hand raise, and obviously you're visible, you can see that.
Yeah.
And that's one option, but I just didn't see anything about how the voting is going to be worked out.
Yeah.
And I agree with Supervisor Dice, the technology is so simplified. I mean, even I can do organized Zoom meetings now, so you know it's got to be simplified.
Yep. Yeah, we use that on Zoom on a couple of the WCA events. And I think on the ACO thing we did also. So it can be done. Okay, any further discussion on the ordinance? Okay, we'll vote on that. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Ordinance amending various sections of the code giving the county executive the authority to make appointments to the Ethics Board, Home Board, Land Information Council, Local Emergency Planning Committee, and Monarch Library Systems Board. I'm assuming Brad is going to talk about this because of the change in our governance.
Yes. Under the statutes regarding the powers of the county executive makes appointments, except where he's prohibited from making those appointments by statute. In our code, when we didn't have a county executive, we set forth various methods by which certain appointments to various committees are to be made. Those are rules we imposed upon ourselves, but are not imposed by statute. These committees that you have before you in this proposed ordinance are examples of that. What this ordinance does is essentially transfer those appointments from the county board chair's authority to the county executive's authority. And there may be one or two coming yet beyond this particular ordinance, as we're finding maybe a couple more hidden in the code in places. But that's the idea behind this, is to transfer certain appointment authority from the county board chair to the county executive.
Okay, I forgot to ask for a motion in a second. Motion, Carol, Supervisor Mary, Supervisor Bossert. Any discussion on this? Oh, sorry. Supervisor Dice.
Am I on? Okay, thank you. I would move to amend the ordinance, specifically section 7, the summary part, which indicates Monarch Library Systems Board. That is different than the County Library Services Board. And according to the ordinance, that's the board that you want to include on this, not Monarch. Correct?
Yes, the summary, of course, doesn't get published in the code. So we could make that correction or that change without having to take a formal amendment. Okay.
Any other discussion? See none, let's vote on this. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes to the board. Ordinance amend Article 1, Executive Section 7-3 relating to powers and duties. Do we need to have County Executive Showman? Would you like to speak to that, or it's pretty straightforward? So. Okay. Any further discussion on this? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes to the board. Thank you. Ordinance amend section 15-6 relating to procedural rules. Attorney Stern will address this.
This is a change to the procedural rules of the county board that would allow the county board chairperson to place items on the county board meeting agenda that have not gone through committee when going through committee for some reason or other would be impractical. Currently, all resolutions and ordinances are required to go through committee. And if they do not, what happens is when they come before the county board, there has to be a motion to suspend the rules by 2/3 membership before the matter can be considered. It's essentially a procedural road bump, if you will. we've had this come up several times. In fact, at last month's meeting, there was an example, and it was very confusing to everybody as to why we needed to suspend the rules. It was the issue regarding the resolution, I believe, supporting the health department. We've had other situations where that's come up. One was, I think, to sell some property that the county owned and so on. That didn't go through committee because there had to be, there was timeliness involved in getting that vote made so the property could be transferred. This came from my office. This was something I thought of as parliamentarian that might be beneficial. And the reason for that in part is because, quite frankly, the rule to suspend rules, if you will, is really more intended for situations in which, for example, we had a county board meeting not long ago where we didn't have that ordinance yet that allowed telephonic or video appearances. And so there was a vote by the board to suspend rules to allow certain members to appear that evening by video. It was really something that we needed to do, and to suspend rules, it's something you really contemplate to take care of something like that. If the county board chair is allowed to bring something directly to the county board agenda and it hasn't gone through committee because of timeliness or some issue like that, there's still a remedy for the board supervisors if they aren't pleased with that decision. And in particular, what that remedy is a motion to refer the matter back to committee. So there is still a remedy, if you will, an appeal, if you will, if you decide that the reason that this came forward really wasn't because of any impracticality, but because of whatever. And that exists anyway in our code, that rule that says you can refer something back to committee. Also, this really isn't giving the board chair any new power the way I see it, because there, as I've said, have been occasions in which the chair has brought things to the board without them going through a committee. So he's doing that anyway when he sees fit. What this clarifies is simply that we don't need to take a vote to suspend the rules to allow that to happen. Again, the remedy is, if you don't like it, make a motion to refer it back to committee. And that's a majority vote only. And even if the board votes to suspend rules and allows the discussion to occur, it can still, at that point, if it wants to, vote to refer the matter back to committee. So that extra step of that 2/3 majority vote really is probably largely unnecessary and really should only be used on special occasions, such as when there's something the board needs to take up immediately that is really outside the typical rules. So I bring this forward as a suggestion. I think it makes sense. I leave it to your discretion to decide whether you'd like to adopt that rule or not, but it's really intended to remove some confusion and an extra occasional vote from time to time and allow you just to get right to the matter.
Yeah, motion, second. Supervisor Bossert. Any further discussion on this matter?
So in your update, it says county board chair shall place all resolutions, ordinances, or motion that are voted on and passed by standing committee that are referred to the county board for action on the agenda of the next scheduled meeting of the county board. Does currently the county board chair have discretion on what he is allowed or what he might disallow from?
The answer is no. The reason that's called out and highlighted is because I rearranged some of the language in the code so that it read better. This already is in the code. It's just that I moved it to a different spot just to further up in the paragraph. Right now, if something passes committee, the county board chair must put it on the agenda. There's also something currently in the code that says if something does not pass committee, the county board chair can still put it on the agenda. So that language looks like it might be new. It's not. I just moved it to make the paragraph read better.
Great. I just wanted to make sure we were clear on how that worked with the chair's rights or responsibilities.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll vote on this. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes to the board. Resolution advisory resolution opposing Governor Tony Evers' executive order number 82, declaring a statewide public health emergency. I can speak to that. I put this forward. In extending his original public health emergency declaration, Governor Evers again is bypassing the legislature and violating state statute in doing so. I think it's incumbent upon us to call out lawbreakers, even if it happens to be the governor, and ask our legislature to take action against law breaking. So in a nutshell, that's what it is. Motion, second. Any further discussion on the matter? No, the resolution goes forward to the county board.
Cause you know I'm not gonna shut my mouth over this. But I'm not saying nothing yet.
Yeah, I wanted to keep it short and sweet because I got a pretty lengthy statement later. Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, moves to the board. Last is the COVID-19 microloan program to assist small businesses that we're not getting an assist from the government otherwise. And County Executive Showman will expound on this.
I will. So hopefully it was the reports and the heads of terms were explanatory of what we're attempting to do. To boil it down into a nutshell, basically what we're hoping for is a supplementary program to what's been referred to as PPP. We're hoping to hit a niche market of small businesses who really had a difficult time accessing PPP dollars. In discussions with both our revolving loan fund committee chairman and Christian Chechlock, our executive director of EDWC, they've both made clear that there's certainly a niche of businesses that had some real struggles during that time, and that's creating long-term issues for those businesses. Of course, Congress is out there still trying to negotiate another deal that might provide additional dollars. That would potentially have an impact on whether or not this happens. As you can see from our proposal, what we're really looking to do is utilize existing dollars that already exist in the revolving loan fund to fund the program. And we propose to essentially, as I explained it to a few people, use the bank's money to insure that money. So the Miller Park tax expired several months ago now. Washington County is anticipating getting a chunk from the Department of Revenue that was overtaxed. What I'm proposing is, last we had heard that was about $600,000 for Washington County. What I'm proposing is that we use that found money to help backfill any losses we would have in this potential fund. Anything that isn't utilized would then come back and you'd be able to do whatever you wish with it. My feeling was those are dollars that taxpayers overpaid anyway. I think this is a good use to give it back. I've been trying to think of other ways that you could give it back. There's no easy mechanism to give sales tax back. For example, if you try to give it back to property taxpayers, that's a different group of people than paid sales tax. So I felt businesses, most of whom are probably paying sales tax, it would make some sense to utilize these funds for that. If we didn't get a sufficient amount from the Department of Revenue, from the Miller Park tax, then either this won't happen or it'll happen at a lower funded rate. So it's kind of contingent on that. I would suggest that if you feel the necessity, that you make it clear in the resolution. Otherwise, I can tell you I won't proceed unless those dollars come through. And if something happened with Congress, we'd evaluate whatever they pass, although based on the executive order of the president, it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. So that's really where this is coming from. It's trying to find the niche of those businesses that weren't able to be assisted and try to help shore them up, anticipating that this COVID is going to last several more months.
Okay, we'll take motion first before we ask questions. Motion by Supervisor Bossert, Supervisor Dice. Okay, good. Go ahead, Supervisor, Supervisor Schleifield.
Do we have any feeling for how many businesses we're talking about?
So we're shooting for a maximum loan of about 20,000. And so if we're able to accomplish that, we could do as many as 25 loans. I anticipate there's going to be businesses that are much lower. But if you look at what we're actually attempting to do, part of the problem with the PPP program was it was bureaucratic and paperwork intensive. So for a very, very small business, I'm talking one that's really probably less than 10 employees. It might have been just too much for them. So this is a pretty low bar to get over to apply and qualify for. Therefore, our expectation is $20,000 would be a lot of money for a business like that. And thus it could be smaller than 20,000. So as many as 20, as few as 25, likely more than that.
Supervisor Mary?
Question. Is this the process that would be handled through the county, or do the banks become involved in this? Or is it kind of a one-stop, you come up here somewhere, it's all taken care of and it's done? Or do we have to go back to the banks and the traditional lenders?
Yeah, thank you. Good question. So this program would be administered entirely by EDWC. The way that EDWC operates is they have county money, a revolving loan fund that's actually tendered and cared for by the county. They administer the in and out of that money. The same thing would happen in this case. As a matter of fact, it's actually that money that they continue to administer. This would just be a new program to administer through. And then on the back end, currently we document it as an escrow account. An escrow account would backfill any losses. So if a business took a loan from us, say it's a $20,000 loan, they go out of business entirely. Obviously, we're not going to get that $20,000 back. This escrow would backfill that $20,000. If all the businesses pay it back, that money comes back straight back to the general fund at whatever time that is. So it's always EDWC kind of playing that banker role. The county stays out of that. All we're really doing, the county's really doing, is holding the money and allowing for them to come in and come out based on the protocols that we put into place in the program. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
I should also note, in talking to our finance director, there's some question as to whether or not we'd actually do an escrow or some other kind of reserve fund for that money. So we're still working through, obviously it's a heads of terms document. It's not a final agreement. And so we're still working through exactly what that'll look like, but suffice it to say, there'll be, under this proposal, there will be essentially an insurance fund that backfills the revolving loan fund. If that makes sense.
If I might, a follow-up question. Have we been approached by, or do we know of specific businesses that would be automatically eligible for this? I mean, has someone approached us and said, hey, could you help us? Or do we have an idea already of a dozen organizations that could be qualified for this?
EDWC has been in contact with several in my conversations with both the revolving loan fund chair and executive director of EDWC. They had feelers out early in the process. We contemplated doing something similar to this and working in some kind of consortium with some of our other larger businesses to create this kind of insurance fund. At that time, we were still kind of seeing PPP through and waiting. And then, of course, Congress came with another round of PPP. Now that we're almost 6 months away from that, we're starting to kind of see who was left out and is still very vulnerable in the marketplace. And they've been in contact with a handful, at least the last time I talked to them, that they felt were probably eligible. And they felt if we kept it, if you notice in the heads of terms, 500,000 is the bottom end of what they had suggested for the size of a fund. So they felt like very, very rapidly they'd use that money. Get it loaned out, of course. But the point of all of this, and the reason that you have the kind of that insurance behind it or the escrow behind it, is these are very vulnerable loans. They're vulnerable businesses. And so you know that going in, unlike EDWC's normal operating procedures, which they still have an unblemished record. Even in the one case where they had somewhat of a blemish, they got their money back. In this particular case, you're almost guaranteed to have losses. The question is, how do you keep the fund whole, which is sales tax dollars that have fund that, or property tax dollars that have funded that over time. That's the purpose of the insurance or the escrow.
I actually think this is an excellent program. If we do this, people working at places with under 10 employees, they lose their jobs. They're a burden on society. If we can help those businesses stay in business, keeping people employed, I think this is something that's really nice, something that's really good for our citizens. So I think it's a win. It's a win for everybody all the way around. So thanks for coming up with that idea, Josh.
Yeah, it really is the EDWC theme. And I just want to make clear, I think that it was brilliant to utilize the revolving loan fund. It's money we've already got. It's for this purpose. And by taking the money from Miller Park and applying it here, you're really eliminating the risk on your existing portfolio. And then what you're doing from my perspective is you're spending 50 cents on the dollar. So even if we lost half of those loans, it's 50 cents of the whole dollar that you already had in the revolving loan fund. So, and it's money that we really never expected to begin with. And it goes back to folks who were producing sales tax in the first place. So I could understand if we don't want to do it because you don't want to take the risk, because there's definitely a risk. On the other hand, it's hard to come up with better ways to utilize sales tax dollars than people who are creating the sales tax in the first place.
Okay, any other discussion? See none, we'll vote on this. All in favor, somebody say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, passes. Onto the board. Our next meeting is Friday, August 14th, 1:00 PM. It's at the Sheriff's Department training room. It's going to be AIS and Executive Committee. All other supervisors are invited to attend and participate. We'd like to have everybody come. So if you're available, please do. Everybody adjourn.